Norman, but thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here or to be anywhere where people are talking about building out the nation's infrastructure, both private and public. And let me just, for those of many of you in the room, I'm sure don't know who North America's Building Trades are. It's a umbrella organization for the 15 unions that are involved in the construction industry. So anywhere from plumbers and pipe fitters to carpenters to electricians to sheet metal and others, totaling 15. We have about 3 million members in the United States and Canada. And for the most part, construction and maintenance is our business, and that's what we do. And being in that business for, in some cases now, almost 150 years in the United States, and being in training of craft workforce for well over 100 years in the United States, you can imagine that, like any business in this room, we try to drive demand for our goods and services that we provide, which is the skilled labor. So we've been involved in all the infrastructure federal programs for decades now, working with policymakers, leaders, both in the House and Senate, in administrations and cabinet offices, trying to figure out the big question of the day today, and for the last decade for sure, is how do we finance these projects? So that's something that we spend a lot of time, energy, and have a certain expertise with. On the private side, I like to say that what you get from the building trades when you break ground on your project is the most highly skilled, most productive, safest craft workforce in the world, and I'll challenge anybody to take me on that one. But you also get a whole bunch of other things on this other side, from workforce development to assistance in the legislative and regulatory process, up to and including financing of your projects with our $500 billion in pension funds, some of which are deployed in infrastructure and energy vehicles that some in this room have used from time to time to build out the financing for their projects. We were able to get in early with President Trump and his administration to start the dialogue on one of the key components of his agenda, which is a major build out of the nation's infrastructure, both the public and the private side. And we too, like your 50 projects, were able to provide a list of 26 for the president and the administration that again meet the criteria that Dan just described. We talked about on Squawk Box, and Norman described. I know Dan Slane's in the back of the room, who we've spent some time with. It's good to see you again. But we pushed 26, and you probably say, why 26 and not 50? Well, the 26 that we pushed are ones that we're going to build. We're not as interested in pushing for projects that we're not going to participate in. So we pushed for 26, and these are projects that are, have, as Dan laid out, a very good metric. 3 metrics. They have engineering, either complete or substantially complete, the financing complete or substantially complete, and then the permitting process, either through it or substantially through it. 2 out of the 3, and then something lightning on the third one, which actually makes up what we describe as those shovel-ready projects. And found a receptive audience in the administration. Of course, the president's background. We in the building trades have worked with the president for decades, and before that worked with his father in New York and other places in the country. So having somebody as the President of the United States that understands our business is something that we've never experienced before. And it's exciting because of the priority he's put on it. But one thing the President is focused on, and we think rightfully so, and you're discussing here, and I listened to the Congressman discuss it, is the issue of getting through the regulatory process to actually get a project out of the ground, built and producing product at the end of the day for whoever the investor is, or in a public piece of infrastructure, whether it's roads, bridges, what needs to happen to make a community work better and make it a more attractive place for investment for the private side. And I can tell you that there's been good work done, in recent Congresses, particularly Senator Portman worked on some permitting issues, but it was just scratching the surface of what really needs to be done. And I'm hopeful that with all the people that are focused on it, both in the private side and in the public policy side in government, we'll get to a point where we really step back, as I think I heard described, and say, why do we do this? How did we get here? And what is the appropriate changes that we need to make the investment in both public and private infrastructure more seamless, not ever completely seamless, but more seamless. And over time, as described, the accumulation of regulations. I mean, I think we describe it wrong. I don't think the regular people across the heartland understand what we're talking about. I mentioned this morning that, unless you go to put an addition on your house or you want to pour a driveway and it requires your township or your county to be involved in issuing a permit for you to proceed with your construction, you get a little taste of what you got to go through. Now imagine a major piece of infrastructure where you've got to deal with federal regulators, a slew of agencies, state regulators, maybe down to the county or municipality level. The time and effort it takes to get that done is just amazing. It's amazing that we ever build anything when you think about, deploying capital that can be better spent someplace else where it's generating revenue, as opposed to sitting hostage for 2, 4, 6, 8 years while we're trying to get through this process. It's amazing that we build anything in the United States today. And my hat's off to the folks that deploy that capital that ultimately employs my members for the stick-to-itiveness. But we need predictability. And that's why I'm hopeful with this president and this administration and this Congress starting to focus, and groups like this and many others that we're engaged with, actually taking the time to say what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I don't know how you explain it to get people. It's not a sexy topic, but could you imagine if we were in a situation where you and your family wanted to go change healthcare providers, and you had a process where you made your application and then they studied it for 3 years and decided whether they will sell you healthcare or not. Or if, what would happen to the housing market, if it took 18 months or 24 months to get approved for a mortgage, or financing a car. I mean, there's streamlined processes in place for all those industries because those are things that people want and need in the United States. Well, infrastructure is something that we want and need also, and we have to find a way to do that. But the current gauntlet that people got to go through to deploy their capital and build this infrastructure adds so much cost to the end product that it really affects my members in a very negative way. And I'll tell you why. We all in this room have heard of value engineering. So when you propose a project and you have to put on the added cost of the regulatory burden that you have to go through in the process, that adds cost to the project. Once you get into the regulatory process, then it starts to open you up to the litigation process, and then every frivolous lawsuit that can be thrown at you is thrown at you. And you still stay the course, and you get to the point where you've actually got the ability now in the permitting and the financing to build the project, but you spend an awful lot of money on getting to that point. So then the value engineering starts to come in, and where can we cut costs? Well, a lot of times where the cost gets cut is on the back of the worker. Not the fault of the entrepreneur or the builder, but at the end of the day, they're in business to make money, and they're going to cut costs where they can. Well, if we can cut down on the regulatory process, if we can cut down on the litigation process, this potentially really opens the door up for what in the construction industry has been stagnant wage growth for 30 years. And that's one of the main reasons why we've had stagnant wage growth, is because of all these processes put in place and the litigious nature of our society. It could open American construction workers and others in the operations side to those kinds of livable middle-class wages where we can do all the things and raise families. So I'm hopeful that the side benefit to the work that we'll all do together to get there will help to make that happen. Now, in the meantime, I listened to the congressman speak a little bit about, career and technical education, and we're all for it, and I wish that they were still in the room because I'd like them to hear my commercial. because other than the United States military, we're the second largest purveyor of skills training in the world. We operate 1,600 training centers just in the United States. We spend $1.2 billion a year of our own money, not federal government money, not state money, not city money, our money that's contributed by our members on an hourly basis to fund those training centers. And if we were a K through 12 school district, we'd be the 6th largest school district in the United States. If we were a state university system, we would be the 3rd largest state university system after University of California and SUNY New York. At our peak, before what we call the construction depression, not the recession of 08, 09, 2010, 2011, we had about 270,000 people in our training centers. And we can double that capacity. So when I read editorials in the Wall Street Journal and others who wring their hands about how we're going to build all this, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the capability, I'm here to tell you we do. We have the training capacity. What we need is the jobs. There are people willing and able to go into the construction industry if it's a ladder to a middle-class life, and we can do it. And we certainly, what we don't need is through this process to say, you know what, we just can't do it in the United States, and let's create a new temporary foreign worker program where we import the construction labor in the United States. We've got some abusive visa programs now that, quite honestly, my members deal with. Again, another reason that we have downward pressure on wages in the United States is when you can bring in, unfettered numbers of workers from around the world who are used to different living standard than, what an American citizen is and my member. So we have that capability and we're ready to go. But what we don't do is give false hope, and we don't train people for jobs that don't exist. So there needs to be a pipeline of jobs. There needs to be a look through the future to know that I can make a career for my family and support a middle-class lifestyle, which they deserve in the United States. But the jobs have to be there, and this is a great opportunity through this, maybe once in a generation, maybe once in our lifetime. Certainly, I was born after the Eisenhower interstate system was thought up, funded, and built for the most part. We have an opportunity here, and in the building trades, we run 120 what we call apprenticeship readiness programs that connect as feeder organizations to our apprenticeship training programs to prepare people for apprenticeship. And much like the president has focused on in the campaign and in his administration about creating opportunity for folks that haven't had a lot of it, our programs are focused on, communities of color, women, veterans, and we move lots and lots of people through those apprenticeship readiness programs into apprenticeship, because apprenticeship in today's construction industry has very rigorous and high standards for you to be productive and employable. You got to meet those standards. So we help prepare people to be successful in apprenticeship through these apprenticeship readiness programs. And we work with all kinds of community partners, some national, some local. We work with whole industries or counties or cities, depending. We have a great program going down at Plant Vogel in Waynesboro County, Georgia, where we moved a couple hundred people through an apprenticeship readiness program onto apprenticeship and building Plant Vogel, and some of them have graduated already from their apprenticeship or on their way to a middle-class lifestyle with skill sets that'll last their family a lifetime. Or we can do it with a group of industries or with a county. We work with local community groups. We work with churches. We work with people who are interested in helping people. That's our small part, but important part of what the building trades does. And I know the president's committed to this. He's talked a lot about it. And once again, when we get to the finish line, and I'm confident that we will, how do we make sure that this investment, both on the public side and the private side, has the maximum benefit, creating, upward economic trajectory, for folks who are in the system already and folks who are hoping to get in the system and move to the middle class through this investment in infrastructure. So just to close, I'm confident, like I said, that the president really understands this business. There's no question he's been successful for decades in this business, and he understands the value. He knows what all the crafts are. He knows what they do. He knows what, obviously he knows what kind of money they make based on his experience of signing checks. We look forward to working with him and his administration, and I got to tell you that, you know, speaking for the building trades, when I hear naysayers out there that say nothing's going on in infrastructure, nothing's happening, why isn't anything happening, they're talking about this, they're talking about that. Well, there's groups like this, and there's a fantastic team that the President's assembled, you know, in the White House that are working on this infrastructure program. There are champions on Capitol Hill, very thoughtful people like Senator Portman, Senator Sullivan working on the permitting issues. There are other groups that we're working with, like Business Roundtable, and I know Chris Mann's in the audience, put together a group from Sullivan and Cromwell, engaging with them and others to help with the pieces of the puzzle to get to that comprehensive infrastructure investment. You know, Congressman Schuster is doggedly pursuing and every day pursues how to invest in the nation's infrastructure and continues to do so. So, you know, I believe that the President's put a championship team on the field to think through this process within his organization. He's put some other people that are very bright to work on this process in some of the agencies. And I believe that at the end of the day, like everything else in this town, it's a huge fight. And there's fights over financing, and there's fights over process, and there's fights over everything else. But there's groups like this group who have this expertise, have the gravitas, you know, in this room and amongst yourselves, who need to help them, help us help them to keep pushing, because I really believe that we're going to get an infrastructure bill, and I think it's going to be a robust bill, and I think we're going to figure out how to finance it, and I think there's opportunities to come up with the financing, and I can tell you that we're working just as hard on the Democratic side of the aisle when it comes to comprehensive infrastructure investment and some of the things that need to be done to make it a going enterprise. On the regulatory side and some things, everybody's going to have to give a little bit. But I really believe we can do it, and I'm excited for the opportunity to be here and the work that we've done together. And on behalf of Ed Smith, who runs Union Labor Life Insurance Company, which has a large commercial real estate fund and also a large and very much growing infrastructure fund. Like I said, that full component from workforce development to actually helping to fund the projects. We're all in, so anything that we can do to be helpful, please let us know. And Norman, again, thanks for the opportunity to be here today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions for Sean? One question right there. Thank you very much. It's on.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to drill down on one area, and that's the regulatory reform. A lot of folks have talked about regulatory reform, concurrent process, and all of that. What's the closest thing you can identify that exists today in terms of a group that's actually working that, actually trying to solve that? Is there an entity that's really working that now, or is that a need?
I would say who we're participating with, Business Roundtable, is the most focused on that. The Energy and Economic Development Committee, we started working with them on this probably late November, early December. It builds off of some of the work that Senator Portman did in his legislative effort, successful effort last year. So I would say that that's a group that outside of government that's really focused on it. I can't speak to who's leading the charge in the administration or in Congress, but it's a team effort, and that'll be a valuable exercise for when they're looking for the answers to the questions.
Very good. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks.